Okay, let's talk about Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James, the war of words. I mean, this is a beef that's beefing like beefaroni. This beef is going to even last longer than Biggie and Tupac. And the only reason why that beef didn't last as long because God rest their souls, they're no longer on this planet. But I digress. We're going to get into this. And basically, LeBron James went on Pat McAfee and he was airing out his grievances, not only on Stephen A. Smith, but Brian Windhorst and several other personalities at the worldwide leader of sports, ESPN. And he also talked about some other things. But he, even though he didn't spend the whole hour plus interview focusing on Stephen A. Smith, the whole agenda is the reason why he went on Pat McAfee is to address Stephen A. Smith. So everyone needs to get out of their feelings thinking that this interview has nothing to do with Stephen A. Smith. It has everything to do with Stephen A. Smith. He's going on ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports entertainment, and he's not even going on the number one show, First Take, to address his issues. He went on Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee has a big platform, all right? There's a reason why ESPN gave Pat McAfee that money, but I digress. We'll keep moving forward. And basically, he aired out his grievances on Stephen A. Smith, and this is spawned because of recent comments Stephen A. Smith said about Bronny James. And LeBron James took what Stephen A. Smith said as, you're trying to disrespect his family. You're trying to disrespect him as being a father and leave his kid out of his mouth when he's critiquing Bronny James or any player in the National Basketball League. All right? The NBA. And this has spiraled out of control between not only Stephen A. Smith but LeBron James. The fact that we're still talking about this, it blows my mind. And basically, before I get into this, there's going to be fans on either side of the fence. There are going to be people that are for Stephen A. Smith and for LeBron James. Before I get into this, I want to say this. For these guys that are so successful, have so much influence, for these guys to do something and getting paid on the highest level and showing off and showcasing your talent on the two most powerful platforms, which is the National Basketball Association and ESPN. There's no higher platform of achievement than those two platforms. As content creators, we would love to get on ESPN. Ticket TV, Dreamers Pro. Don't get it twisted or confused. If ESPN offered any of us on YouTube that type of money to, showcase our talent on ESPN, we'll take it in a heartbeat. Or to play a childhood game on the highest level, which is the National Basketball Association. But I digress. For these two guys to make it, and they're still talking about this, is beyond me. I feel like both of these guys are in the wrong as far as carrying this beef on. All right? So he went on Pat McAfee, aired out his issues, and one of the things there's a lot of things I agree with LeBron James, but the one thing I disagree with LeBron James is, how Stephen A. approached it, talking about, he said he wasn't going to talk about it, but then he talked about it. LeBron, don't you think the reason why he's talking about it is not only for the clicks and the likes, but everyone else is talking about it? So you can't exclude somebody that you had a confrontation with and dictate to them and harboring saying, like, why is he still talking about it? If you two guys really have an issue, I don't understand why this could not be addressed behind the scenes. For you to go on court, and you know there's cameras everywhere, and you know how perception is reality, and not even allow the guy that you have an issue with to rebuttal. You just basically say what you want to say and walk off. I felt, to me, LeBron, that was a weak move. That was the weakest of weakest moves. It's one thing you have an issue with a guy, but it's another thing not even allowing the guy that you have an issue with an opportunity to speak. You just say what you want to say and then you just walk off. You knew at that moment Stephen A. Smith could not challenge you. You knew at that moment Stephen A. Smith couldn't follow you. Okay? You knew. You knew you had all the play in how this was going to look great for you, but bad for Stephen A. Smith. All right? I don't understand why we're still talking about this. Well, anyway, Brian, he went on Pat McAfee. He talked about how Brian Windhorst called him weird, talking about their lifelong friends and things of that nature. But the one thing, LeBron James sometimes, puts his foot in his mouth. And LeBron, when you was in Cleveland, you spoke very highly of Brian Windhorst. You confide in Brian Windhorst. When you went to the Miami Heat, and every media personality called that a weak move, they call that a weak move, the decision, and you're taking your talents to South Beach, and, if you can't beat them, join them, all that stuff. Brian Windhorst was pretty much the only one in your corner saying the total opposite. And you confide to Brian Windhorst to now where you already got your titles, you already have a media platform. There's really no need for you to have Brian Windhorst around. Now all of a sudden you're calling it weird. Okay? You juiced everything out of Brian Windhorst. He was the only one. There was a few people, but he was the only one that was saying that was not a weak move. He was pretty much speaking up for you and speaking against all the other media personalities that called it a weak move. And how you just turned on him. That just tells me a lot about your character. All right? Speaks very highly of your character. You're cool with somebody, but when you have no use for that person, you just throw them away. Okay? I understand you and Stephen A. Smith having issues because, when you was in Cleveland, you used to talk to Stephen A. Smith constantly. And then all of a sudden you stopped talking to Stephen A. Smith. And you confided more in Brian Windhorst. So, when you really think about it, ever since you no longer wanted to talk to Stephen A. Smith, Brian Windhorst wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to communicate with you. Okay? We wouldn't even know who Brian Windhorst is if it wasn't for the decision that you didn't want to speak to Stephen A. Smith anymore. But then one could argue, well, once you utilized Stephen A. Smith, and once you had no need for Stephen A. Smith, you threw him to the side, and here comes Brian Windhorst. And then once you couldn't use Brian, and then once you used everything out of Brian Windhorst, you threw him to the side. When you got the Richard Jeffersons, at one point you confided in Kendrick Perkins. You followed him on social media. Kendrick Perkins critiqued you on one thing, and it was on a basketball level, and you unfollowed him. That just shows that it just tells again about your character, that you're very thin-skinned. You can dish it, but you can't take it. And Stephen A. Smith is in that is the same type of individual. He doesn't use people, but Stephen A. Smith, once he gets what he wants from you, all of a sudden he's very disloyal. And I know a lot of people out there, have their grievances with Skip Bayless. And when Skip Bayless left ESPN, he spoke very highly of Skip Bayless. But when the moment Skip Bayless, had issues over there at Fox Sports 1, he couldn't wait to tell y'all that Stephen A. Smith was the mastermind of First Take. First Take wouldn't be popping if it wasn't for Stephen A. Smith. All right? So I'm not on either one of these guys' side. I think both of these guys, I feel like they're turncoats. I feel like once they use you, they don't need you anymore. And I just think all this is just a bruised ego with not only Stephen A. Smith, but LeBron James. For us to still talk about this is laughter. It's great entertainment for content creators like myself. But for them, they don't need all this exposure. Now, Stephen A. Smith got back on First Take, and he talked about how, LeBron, once he demonstrated and shows when LeBron is done with you, he no longer needs you. He no longer supports you. He talked about how he wasn't there when Dwayne Wade had his ceremony. He talked about how he wasn't there at the service of God rest his soul, Kobe Bean Bryant. Now, there are articles. Someone pointed out, I don't know if Stephen A. Smith or whoever getting it twisted and confused that there was a memorial, there was a public memorial, a private memorial, and then there was the funeral. And I don't know which one he attended. A lot of people saying the LA Times reported that he was there at the public memorial. Now, Stephen A. Smith is sticking to his gun saying that he was not there. So either Stephen A. Smith is a big-time liar or Stephen A. Smith knows something that we don't know. And that's another thing about LeBron James. LeBron James, you're playing a winless game. It's damn it, even if you're going to win now with the trolling, but, as the days, the weeks, the months, the years, and the decades go on, people like Stephen A. Smith are still going to be on ESPN or some public platform. And it's just not Stephen A. Smith. It's a lot of media personalities that are very salty with you, and they will love to constantly talk about you and all of the accusations, this bow code thing. I guarantee you it's going to pick up some steam. And when you're no longer playing basketball and you're retired from the NBA and ESPN don't prioritize you as someone influencer to talk about because you're no longer in the NBA, I feel like these guys will continue to talk about you. And if you want to say throw his name in the mud, okay, fine. They're throwing his name in the mud. But I'm telling you, you're not going to win this battle when it's you against the media. You're not going to win. Now, there's another thing someone talked about, like Mind Your Game podcast is up, season 2. JJ Redick used to co-host with LeBron James. Now he's the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, and they got rid of Darvin Ham. With that in itself, you can't say that there was no shadiness going along with Darvin Ham. JJ Redick is not doing any better than what Darvin Ham could have done with that team. All right, but I digress. He's got Steve Nash. A lot of people point out how come he's not, a lot of like Richard Jefferson. How come he's not going to co-host it with Richard Jefferson, who glazed LeBron James constantly? Or how come he hasn't made an appearance on Club Shay Shay? Shannon Sharp has glazed LeBron James publicly. Now, there have been moments where he's been very critical of LeBron James. And LeBron James comes off as, if you're not glazing him, then he has no need for you. You're not important to him. You can't be straight up with LeBron James. You have to constantly glaze. You basically have to lie when he screws up. All right. But to me, this makes no sense. I think I think this makes both LeBron and Stephen A. Smith look very, very small. And in the long run, short term, LeBron James winning on court of public opinion and social media and things of that nature. But I'm telling you, the long game, the media is going to win over LeBron James. LeBron can't play forever. LeBron is not going to continue to have influence and control like he has now. Sooner rather than later, that is going to die down. If you don't believe me, go look at Michael Jordan. When Michael Jordan was in the league, he had influence. He had control. Yeah, he had critics. He had criticism. He had tough skin to withstand all that. But the moment he retired, the glazing stopped. The worshiping stopped. And the media said what they really wanted to say about Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Same could be said about Kobe being Bryant. And it's going to happen to LeBron James. So this is one battle that in the long term, I don't see LeBron James winning. Personally, I don't see neither one of them winning. But hey, court of public opinion is, a guy told me a long time ago, a lie is more entertaining than the truth. So hey, whatever. So yeah, that's all I got. Guys, tell me what you think. Hit me up in the comment section. Deuce.